Okay, it's 7 p.m. We need to start.
Started already.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. The special guest, the Director General of Royal Hospital, Dr. Qasim Salmi, the Deputy Director General at Royal Hospital, heads of departments, invited speakers, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dr. Nawal Mahyijari, a psychosomatic psychiatrist in the Department of Medicine of Royal Hospital. It gives me great pleasure on behalf of my team to welcome you this evening to this event. The World Health Organization has set aside the 10th of October every year to be observed as World Mental Health Day, with the overall objective of raising awareness of mental health issues around the world and mobilizing efforts in support of mental health. The day provides an opportunity for all stakeholders working on mental health issues to talk about their work and what more needs to be done to make mental health care a reality for people worldwide. I wish to take this opportunity to welcome participants from across the nation to this Mental Health Day Symposium 2020 during COVID-19 era, organized by the Psychosomatic Psychiatry team of Royal Hospital. In line with the overall objectives of the WHO, the aim of this symposium is to increase awareness of mental health related issues during such exceptional situation of COVID-19 pandemic. This symposium, therefore, offers a unique opportunity to gather professionals from a variety of subspecialties of psychiatry and psychology to emphasize the importance of integrating psychiatry into mainstream patient healthcare, as well as to promote mental health well-being of healthcare workers. The contribution of psychiatrists and other mental health professionals is essential for mental health well-being of our patients in particular, and in the society in general. It's crucial, therefore, to empower their role within the healthcare community. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank the management of Royal Hospital, from the DG to all other members of management team, for their invaluable continuous support to the success of this event. In addition, I would like to express special gratitude to my colleagues and heads of various units and departments in the hospital for the appreciation of our contribution as the psychosomatic psychiatry team in the services we provide to our patients. Last but not least, I would like to express my sincere thanks to the brightest star of the scientific event, Mr. Hashil Hatmi, for his untiring support in facilitating the event, ranging from organizing the technical matters to the whole professional coordination process. Thank you very much. Now, I would like to give the floor to the Director General of Royal Hospital, Dr. Qasim Salmi, to give a short welcoming opening speech. The floor is yours, Dr. Qasim.
Thank you, Dr. Nawal, and Assalamu alaikum, Masa al Khair al-Kul. Good evening for everybody. So I would like to welcome you all to this session to mark the occasion of the World Mental Health Day 2020. This session is meant to discuss and prepare participants to deal with the COVID-19 and the mental effect of this disease pandemic. How to deal with it, how to be aware of its mental effects, and how to mitigate those effects. Let me thank the speakers or thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Qasim, for your presence. And now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Hashil to moderate this event.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and good evening. It is a pleasure to be here once again. I want to thank everyone here for joining us. I'd like to thank our Director General of Royal Hospital, speakers, the management of Royal Hospital for supporting us in these initiatives. Definitely, these have been very difficult times and unexpected, and lots more to come through. And it's important that we've chosen today's World Mental Health Day on the COVID era, looking at what we've been going through and what is expected to come. I would like to begin by expressing again thanks to all of you for joining, and we hope to learn a lot from today from our guest speakers, which we are very thankful and grateful for their time and effort putting into this event. So we have our speakers, Dr. Rodger Martin, Dr. Alya Sultan, Ms. Roopa, Koshy, McCall. We have Ms. Renilda, Van Heuven, Dernison, and finally Wedad, Ms. Wedad Salim Zakwani. We will start with employee burnout with Dr. Rodger Martin. Dr. Rodger, I will pull out your slides now.
Excellent. Can everybody hear me okay, Hashil?
1 second.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you okay.
It's a great pleasure to be able to talk to everyone on World Mental Health Day. This day couldn't have come at a more timely time. Just 1 hour ago, I received a message from Dr. Muna Shukeli and Dr. Nasik Al-Saeed, and they've both just published with colleagues, Professor Samir Al-Adawi and other colleagues, a paper in the British Medical Journal Open on anxiety and insomnia amongst healthcare workers in Oman, showing that levels of anxiety and insomnia are far higher than in the general population. So these talks this evening couldn't have come at a better time. So let's dive in, and I'm going to give you my top 10 tips for looking after yourself at home and work. Please, the next slide. These are my top tips for coping with stress. These are all evidence-based tips, and I'm going to go through them very quickly because we've only got 10 minutes each, but maybe if there are questions afterwards. The first thing is, at times of stress or difficulty, try to calm down, and the way to do this is to activate the vagus nerve, which slows down the heart, and the simplest way to do this is to have deep breathing right down into the tummy or the belly. Make your breath come right in and go right down into your tummy, and do that for 3 or 4 times, and you'll notice that your heart rate comes right down and you feel much more connected with things. I'm sure many of you have tried this, but this is a great way to calm down when you're feeling stressed. When people are stressed, they tend to neglect family and friends. And from the research evidence, we know that social connectedness, friendships, family are very important for dealing with stress and burnout. So don't and chats to people when you can meet up with friends. Obviously, there are difficulties at the moment, but spend time like we're doing at the moment on Zoom with friends and family. Don't get isolated and get out of touch with people. During the COVID last 6 to 8 months, it's been difficult to think clearly. One thing that you should remember is count your blessings. Every day, try and think of 3 things that you're grateful for. There's a lot of work now in psychology on gratitude, and after social connectedness, gratitude is one of the most important things for well-being and happiness. So every day, try and think of 3 things you're grateful for. For me, the first one thing today is obviously the opportunity to share some of these things with you and participate with our excellent colleagues. So that's one of my blessings today. The next thing is to remember to show kindness, help, and thank others. Remember that we're all going through this together. And healthcare workers need to look after each other, to ask each other if they've got issues or problems, try and support each other, and remember all the people in the hospital. I remember when I was working in SQU that just saying a few nice words to the cafeteria staff makes all the difference. In fact, I remember one of the ladies in the cafeteria saying to me, oh, when I was off for a few days, oh, we were wondering where you were. So don't forget, the hospital is made up of more than just healthcare workers, and take time to thank everybody for the work they're doing. As I've mentioned, things like donating blood is so important, and this is the time to do it. Next, don't forget to exercise or yoga, so important for physical and mental health. Try and get out for a walk, join a class. Sometimes their classes now, yoga classes, for instance, are being done online, but try to keep up your exercise routines. The sixth thing is to learn to do mindfulness. I'm sure most of you have heard of mindfulness, and I can't overstress the importance of a mindfulness practice. The simplest form of mindfulness is just paying attention to the breath for a period of 5 to 10 minutes. It actually doesn't need to be longer than that. Even if you spend 5 minutes every day, just sitting quietly with your eyes closed and just focus on the sensation of the breath going in and out through the nose. Other people find it easier to feel the breath coming into the chest or the tummy, whatever works for you. But just try and keep your attention on the breath in a gentle way. What you'll find is after 30 seconds, you'll get distracted, your mind will start wandering, but you gently bring yourself back to the breath over and over again. And I'll tell you how to set up a routine in the next slide. Next is rest. People are stressed, people are anxious, people are very busy. Workloads have increased dramatically, as I'm sure you all know. You've got to take time when you finish your shifts, when you finish work, to rest. You need to put your phone on silent and stop panic scrolling through WhatsApp messages, the internet, whatever. And associated with that is sleep. You've got to get 8 hours sleep. If you're not sleeping for 8, sleeping enough. If you can't get 8 hours good sleep, you're not going to be refreshed and able to work, make decisions and look after your patients, do your work, whatever it is. So the key to that is winding down before bedtime. Don't keep watching stimulating things just before bedtime. Of course, you won't sleep if you're stimulated. You need to wind down. And like the 3 things that you're grateful for, the count your blessings, which I mentioned, try and remember 3 things that went well today before you go to sleep. Try and think of 3 things that went well for you. It doesn't matter how big or small they are, but 3 things that went well. Maybe you treated a patient well, maybe you did something better than you expected. Just try and remember these things and maybe just reflect on why it was they went well. Okay, now on the 9th tip, just remember that when you feel stressed, try and think about the bigger picture. Who do you want to be as a person? What is important in life for you? And how do you want to achieve this? These 3 questions will help you see the bigger picture for yourself. More on what's important in life. And I don't know if you're like me, but this COVID reflect on things. We've had more time coming up now with the new lockdown, but to reflect on what life is about, what is important, what are the issues that I want to do, what do I want to achieve in the next months, in the next year, in the next 5 years. And when you're feeling overwhelmed, my last tip is that this is temporary. I know it doesn't seem it at the moment, and I've been giving this talk for 3 or 4 months now in its variations with my colleague, Mrs. Wedad Zakwani. We've been giving these talks, but it is temporary, and we will come out of it, and we will be stronger for going through it. Difficult things will have happened, but they will have challenged us, and we'll realize that we have strengths that perhaps we didn't know we had. Okay, now I'll just quickly move on to the next slide, because if you want to do mindfulness or exercise, you have to learn habits. If you want to get to the gym, lose weight, meditate, whatever you want to do, don't rely on willpower. Willpower is a very, very of energy. Remove temptations. If they're not there, you can't be tempted. Set regular times for activities. I have my clock on my phone, which reminds me to do meditation in the afternoon just after lunch, for instance. Set a time to go to the gym, to do your mindfulness. Keep your gym clothes out so you've got no excuse for not exercising. Obviously, if you do things with a friend or join a class, you're going to be much more motivated to actually do things rather than if you just rely on yourself. If you're doing something with a friend or joining a class, there's far more motivation. And don't put things off. Make a start. It's always easy to say, oh, I'll start tomorrow or the next day, but try and make a start. Activity with a reward. So that's why people use the headphones and listen to interesting or music they like, or they watch a movie on the screen in front of them in the gym. I want to stop there now, and I want to thank everyone for joining us today, and I'll hand you back to Mr. Hashil.
Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation, Dr. Martin. And I'm pretty sure that was, a lot of people must have, that must have been very, very beneficial, especially with the way mindfulness, mindfulness has been spoken about for many, many years now. I remember we used to talk about it a lot back in SQUH, and it is really highly encouraged, particularly in these days. One thing I want to mention to the speakers is, my apologies, 2 points. I did not mention the biography of Dr. Martin. Dr. Rodger Martin has been in Oman for over 20 years. He was trained at the Moseley Hospital, which is one of the top hospitals for mental health in the United Kingdom and in the whole of Europe. Prior to moving Oman, he's been a senior consultant psychiatrist at Sultan University Hospital for over 20 years. And he has an immense interest in occupational or organizational well-being. And we're really happy for him to be up with us today. And before moving on to our next speaker, I want to talk about the questions. With regards to the questions I've written on the chat, for questions, please send the following questions to 95244-504, and please write the speaker _, then your question. Yeah, please write the speaker _ the question, and towards the end of today's event, we will have our Q&A. Now, moving on to our next speaker. Excellent. So we all, hold on, let me just share. Excellent. All right, I hope it's clear for everyone at the moment.
Hashil, am I sharing or are you sharing?
Do you want to share? Whichever is easy for you.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah?
All right.
We've got yours. Okay. Just letting everyone know, Next speaker is Dr. Alya Sultan, clinical psychologist. She's actually the first clinical psychologist with a doctoral training in Oman. Previously, she was the head of psychology at Al Masara Hospital, and she was also at Ibn Sina before it became Masara Hospital. She has also worked at Al Harub Medical Center since 2015 to 2019. And currently, ladies and gentlemen, she is the founder or the co-founder of Eunoia Clinic. She is an expert in ACT, which is known as acceptance and commitment therapy and cognitive behavior therapy, and treats adults and children and adolescents both in the Arabic and the English language. And she also provides supervision for graduates and trainees. Dr. Alya, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Hashil, and thank you, everyone. It really is an honor to be part of this event. Of course, I also decided to dedicate my presentation today to healthcare providers. Healthcare providers are balancing competing demands, caring for our patients, our families, and ourselves. So let's, as Dr. Martin did, let's just dive in straight away and let's get to see some practical strategies to manage stress. I'm going to be following an acronym, FACE COVID. This acronym is basically using principles of a specific type of therapy, and this is really based on a presentation from an free e-resource that's available for anyone online. I guess we start with F, and as you can see, it's focusing on what you can control. Of course, we hear a lot about this, and the thing is, we're all facing unexpected, real challenges, and all these challenges are definitely, affecting every part of our life. And the thing is, we always wonder: is it normal to feel this fear and anxiety? And absolutely, I guess this is the catch. We're not used to feeling it, and now everyone is saying this is it. It's normal. It's normal for us to go through what we're going. And you might also notice that you might start ruminating about stuff. And also you might be thinking about what's going to happen to our loved ones, our community, our workplace. Again, we know that all of this is normal, but the issue is it may not be very helpful. And so, we all wish to quiet that chatter in our mind, and naturally we would either be fighting it or avoiding it. If I can just, take 30 seconds and ask you, I don't want you to think of a chocolate cake. I don't want you to think about, the cream on the top, the ganache on the top, the smell of the chocolate cake, the way that you feel it in your mouth. Literally, I'm absolutely sure that everyone is actually imagining it. It's quite hard for us to tell a thought that I don't want to think about you. And this is the whole dilemma. Whenever we're feeling distress, whenever we're feeling anxiety, all we tell ourselves is, I want to push it away and I don't want to think about it. And it doesn't really work. So what works? Let's have a look at what science and research actually tell us that may actually work for us. That moves us to the letter A, which is acknowledgement. Believe it or not, taking a second, pausing, and actually acknowledging what we're going through is the number one way to go. So examples in our daily lives at work would be, I'm noticing anxiety, or here's the story that I can't help my patients. And of course, you're going to realize, your mind is buzzing, your mind is taking you everywhere. Or also, here is my mind worrying, or I'm having that thought about getting sick. Again, it takes time, but you guys are the experts in yourselves, and you would know whether you have thoughts, feelings, urges, sensations, whatever it is that kind of pops up to you as a person. That takes us to the letter C, which is literally coming back to our body, pushing your feet down onto the floor, straightening our posture, kind of pushing our fingertips together. And why we do that? It's not really trying to distract us or turn away from what's happening. The actual aim, again, takes us to control what we can control. We know we can't control our feelings and emotions, but we can control our body. So whatever it is that we can control, let's focus on that. Moving into the letter E, engage in what you're doing. And grounding is a perfect example. This really is, I guess, a type of attention training. So, and it really touches a lot on the mindfulness, which again, my colleague who was right before me, who really touched on that. So grounding, centering, mindfulness, these are all attention training techniques. And what grounding really says is looking around us, use your senses, things that I see, things that I hear, and especially when I'm in the middle of that emotional storm. If you're in that emotional storm and you feel that your mind is just taking you everywhere, definitely try some of these techniques. They will bring us down. And the above strategies are really good when we're ruminating, obsessing, worrying, and as I said earlier, really focusing our attention on a specific task or activity that we're doing. This takes us to the letter C again, committed action. So it's really what we want to do that's important to us. Of course, it includes all those protective measures against corona, but in addition, simple ways. How can I look after myself realistically? And what kind of care or support that I could do for other people? So kind words for people in distress, or can I help out someone with a task or chore at work? Opening up is very similar to acknowledgement. So, but it's kind of a step further, really making room for those difficult feelings. So instead of, I am scared and I don't know what to do about it and I just want to let go, it's actually, I am scared. It's normal. It's expected to be for me to be scared right now. Can I be kind with myself? Not, oh, why am I scared more than I am scared? Let me help myself through it. Unfortunately, these difficult feelings are guaranteed to keep on showing up in this crisis. So if we acknowledge that we can't stop them, but we can open up and make room for them, allow them to be there, and absolutely treating ourselves kindly. Takes us to the letter V and values, what you want to stand for in this crisis. What sort of person do you want to be? How do you want to be as you're going through it? Have, get in touch with your values, who you want to be, and really look for ways to just sprinkle them throughout your days. It really makes us brighten up and feel the value of who we are. And I, identifying resources. Again, you are the experts in your own life. What works? It's been so many months. I am sure there is something that's working out, whether it's your social network, people around you, friends, family, colleagues, whether it's your sleep routine, your exercise routine, your food. There is something that's working. Make sure that you're aware of it and let's get it going. And then this takes me to the letter D, which is the last one, disinfect and distance physically. Again, for healthcare providers, you are the experts. You told us about this. And so you would be the people who know exactly how to practice and how to regularly engage in what's expected. And I wanted to end by, again, saying, imagine that our chattering mind took a break. Wouldn't that just be amazing if all the chatter kind of rests a little bit? So just keep in mind that these are difficult, scary times, but please do treat yourself kindly. And remember, the only way out is actually through. So have a great mental health day. And thank you so much for having me.
Dr. Alya, we want to thank you extensively for that tremendous lecture, and we can see, ladies and gentlemen, that with these two talks, building resilience. It is as if you are life is pushing you to the ground. How quick are you to come back up? It is extremely important in these times where uncertainty is all around us that we take care of ourselves. As mentioned by both Dr. Alya and Dr. Martin, you need to take time for yourself because a lot of work is being put into, and it is important that we take some time to really, whether it be disengaging from social media and online activities, and really find those things that we can find value in. and we can find meaning in and purpose and a lot of reflectivity. So I want to thank our speakers so far for mentioning that. It is important that we look into building our resiliency and looking into our values and what means to us so that we can feel a lot more better. Our next speaker, just a quick reminder once again for those who are joining, questions, it's on the chat, the number as well, 952-44504. Please write the name of the speaker, underscore the question that you have. All right, and our next speaker is Roopa, Miss Roopa Koshy McCall, a counseling psychologist. She has been trained by renowned experts in behavior medicine in both India, Oman, and Australia. A mental health practitioner with an immense interest in trauma. I'm afraid someone's microphone is, whoever's microphone is on, if you could please mute yourself. Thank you very much. All right, thank you very much. So she's a mental health practitioner with an immense interest in trauma within the social cultural context. Co-authored a number of research papers and is currently researching about the emotional and behavioral impact of COVID-19 on Omani residents. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to present to you, I'd like to present to you Roopa. I'm just opening up her slides. Roopa, you there with us?
Yes, thank you very much, Hashil. That was a very generous introduction. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good evening, everyone. I thank the organizers and the Royal Hospital for inviting me to speak at this important event in recognition of World Mental Health Day here in Oman. I congratulate you on this successful event, which is a testament to the human capacity for resilience during a difficult time. I'm Roopa Koshy McCall, and I'm a mental health practitioner at Harub Medical Center. Today in my presentation, I will be speaking about the identification and management of symptoms of trauma in the time of the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you, Hashil. Can you move to the next slide, please? I will briefly cover the expected pattern of response to global crisis, the definition of trauma and presentation of symptoms, and finally, I will speak a little bit about management and preparation for recovery. Thanks, Hashil. Or to the next slide. So this graph was designed to be a guide to visualize the public sentiment in response to the pandemic. So as you can see, there is an initial denial, which probably included thoughts like, this pandemic will never come to Oman, or, oh, this is just the flu. And from there, we move over to a period of panic and anxiety represented by hoarding behaviors, overexposure to the news and updates of COVID-19, and then going ahead and oversharing, maybe with family and friends, maybe even the odd stranger. Then we eventually descend into a stage of reflection and adjustment and getting used to what is now considered normal. That is working from home or having children where you work, eating where you're working, not shaking hands, wearing masks everywhere, sterilizing your hands more than you used to. This graph is intended to be a guide. However, based on our differences in our cultures and personalities, how we experience this pandemic may not be linear. Can you move to the next slide, Hashil? Thank you. Incredibly enough, this pandemic has highlighted the importance of mental health over all the past years of campaigning. Mental health is now regarded as important as our physical health and safety, and the community thrives within an environment driven by empathy, honesty, and compassion. To the next slide, please, Hashil. So all of us have experienced our own journey or our own story during this time so far. And this has been marked with our own individual stresses in the form of overexposure to information, familial and financial instability, a loss of routine, inadequate supply of goods, a fear for our own and our family's health and safety, and a sense of isolation from this loss of social and physical contact. The next slide, please, Hashil. These stresses might seem quite unthreatening and almost manageable, and sometimes they probably are. Based on research from emergencies and natural disasters, the stage of adjustment is marked with trauma. The Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, edition 5, describes a traumatic event as a situation where one is being exposed to death or threatened death, or actual or threatened serious injury, or actual or threatened violence. And this can happen by direct exposure, witnessing the trauma in person, or indirectly learning of the trauma experienced by a close friend or family, or repeated or extreme exposure to various details of the events. So when we align this definition with the circumstances of what we're going through today, we can more or less identify the potential for these events to be described as traumatic. According to the existing literature, this could be due to the pressure of working maybe on the front lines, or prolonged exposure to grief and anxiety, this intense fear of mortality in case the virus is contracted, and a paranoia and fear associated with social relationships. To the next slide, please, Hashil. So what does trauma generally look like? There is a cognitive element, which is marked with intrusive thoughts and ideas or images from memories or imagination, a behavioral component, which is marked with the avoidance of what could trigger the memory or threat of the trauma, and then an unpredictability in mood and behavior in general. It is usually apparent to the individual and to the members in their community when there are these overt alterations in mood and thought and the resulting change in behavior. The problem with experiencing or going through trauma is that while it's admirable, the human being's resilience to be able to cope with stress often makes them very unaware to the possibility that what they're experiencing might need more than just management. It might not just be a phase. So it is important for us to be very aware of the situation that we are in and have a very tangible idea of our environment so that we can combat these warning signs. To the next slide, please, Hashil. Trauma-related reactions are usually accompanied by depression, which is considered a reaction to what has already happened and a hopelessness about the future. Or it can be accompanied by anxiety, which is an apprehension about things to come, about the future, and how much bigger these things are in comparison to the skill set we have or that we are aware that we have. Substance abuse. Now, this is a slippery slope. It may start off as the odd drink or the odd cigarette, and then it becomes a habit, and then eventually it moves into dependence. So it might appear normal initially until it makes its way into what could be potentially problematic. This is when you might be aware that you are probably trying to avoid experiencing something. Sleep disorders, sleeping too much or sleeping too little. And of course, the most common but very tricky and accurate diagnosis and treatment is post-traumatic stress disorder. To the next slide, please. So now we know what trauma looks like, almost what we can need to watch out for. Does this mean that every single thing that we're experiencing right now is traumatic? Because life has changed quite a bit, and we all find ourselves at various stages feeling very confused or sad, angry, a range of emotions. So then what do we need to watch out for? How do we differentiate between what is normal or what is abnormal, and when are we experiencing chronic stress? So what is normal? Experiencing possibly multiple reactions to a difficult situation, like we're in now. We are in an absurd time, and so yes, experiencing some level of distress is normal and it's okay. But then when and where does this become abnormal or problematic? When these so-called normal feelings start interfering with the quality of our life and interferes for a long period of time. This is when we need to identify whether what we're experiencing might be chronic stress, because you may feel like you have little or absolutely no control over your life. Next slide, please. So what does this interference look like? At work, you might notice a decline in performance, a lack of commitment and motivation, a decline in your attention span and ability to recall, and it feels very unusual. There's a deterioration in appearance and a lack of personal hygiene, withdrawing from people, which may be misunderstood as someone being rude or an attitude problem. There is an increased negativity and therefore a decline in self-esteem and confidence. Finally, presenteeism, which is the opposite of absenteeism. The individual is physically present, but is not really there. To the next. Making room and re-evaluating our judgment of the stress response is a very important skill to possess now in coping with ongoing events. Stress mainly comprises of unpleasant physical experiences marked with an accelerated heart rate, sweaty palms, quick breathing, and a sense of urgency and danger. So why is that happening? The responsibility of our brain is for self-preservation, to generate thoughts, process our world, and make sense of it. As our brain recognizes a threat or danger, it immediately arouses itself towards self-preservation by getting the body ready to fight or flight. Therefore, the stress response is actually a very important function of the brain. It alerts us to notice something unpleasant in our environment and take action. Oops. Sorry, Hashil, anything I can do? Yeah, so thank you, Hashil. Yes. So this stress response, like I was saying, is quite an important function of the brain. So rather than looking at stress as a threat, it might be invaluable to regard the stress that we experience as a unique way of our brain operating as it should and being ready to protect us. Research has shown that stress never killed anyone, but the response to stress, that is worrying about being stressed, has definitely impacted health and the quality of life. To the next slide, please, Hashil. So this is a little bit that my colleagues, Dr. Rodger and Dr. Alya, have already covered, but I'll go through it really quick about creating a safe and healthy environment. Our behaviors are now forced to be flexible, especially with the ever-changing environment and uncertainty that we all are living in. Ensure healthy sleep behaviors like Dr. Rodger Martin emphasized on earlier, regulating the hours of sleep and awakening and the processes that we undertake throughout the day that can interfere with the quality of rest. Enhance decision-making skills and problem-solving skills by prioritizing and increasing tolerance for distress are also very important. Stay connected to peers and social network. Maintain physical distance without social distancing. And challenge our own need for control and to accept that uncertainty is something we have always lived with in some capacity or the other. So in a way, we have always been prepared for this sort of a situation. Our already existing skills just need to be enhanced. And don't hesitate to seek assistance from healthcare providers, especially if you are experiencing various interferences that you might be finding challenging. Thank you, Hashil. So in summary, I have briefly spoken about the expected pattern of the response to the pandemic, what the definition of a traumatic event is, identification of trauma symptoms, and adjusting and living in the times of potential risk. The next slide. So thank you very much today for your time, for the opportunity to be here. Thank you so much. I wish you all very good health and continued safety. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, it is important that we understand that during the beginning of the year, when it was announced that we all heard about Wuhan and what had kicked out and the lockdown that they went through, I don't think any one of us literally thought that this virus would actually spread all over the world. And it became a shock. One thing that Roopa mentioned is that as human beings, our history has shown us that we as human beings, as our species, we adapt to situations. 100 years ago, Europe was just coming out of the first, or what is known as the Great War, or the First World War. And at that time, it was very difficult. People did not know how to communicate with people from different areas, let alone people from their own vicinity. It was very difficult. In our time, we are still able to communicate with people from one side of the world all the way to the next side of the world. It's absolutely amazing. But yet again, when we are going through a traumatic event, we do not know how to, it's not easy to cope with it. Everyone has, different experiences. Loss of a loved one, loss of a business, loss of a job, being let go, loss of opportunities. People had reductions in their salaries and so on and so forth. So, it is really important that we understand that this pandemic has allowed the whole world, this whole planet, in a traumatic state. And we hope that we can find ways and benefit from these talks and presentations on how do we take care of ourselves, how do we understand and find ways of coping, finding the right strategy. All right, our coming speaker, going on to the rise of anxiety and depression during this pandemic. It has been really a journey for all of us. And I would like to present to you Renilda van Heuven Dernison, who is a neurohealth psychologist and a cognitive behavioral therapist with over 20 years experience in child and adolescent psychiatry. She has published about memory disorders in the first handbook of neuropsychology in the Netherlands, Holland. She has been working in the Middle East for the last 7 years in multidisciplinary settings and is currently working at the Harub Medical Center. I welcome her and I will share her presentation momentarily. Renilda, you may begin. The floor is yours. Hold on, let me unmute you.
Yes, that will be helpful. Okay, thank you so much. It's a really great honor for me, especially from Europe, to still be in Oman and in this wonderful country. So my gratitude to all my colleagues and especially to Dr. Kasim. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Thank you, Dr. Nawal. You're the gem in my work at the moment. I don't know where I would be without you, and thank you for all the cooperation. And thank you for the public and the mental health workers and health workers to all share this and build bridges all together. For today, I'm focusing on anxiety and depression. We expected it already to be happening, but we see it definitely going, that there's more anxiety and depression on the rise. So for today, I'll focus a little bit on the literature, then some background on anxiety and depression and the more practical tools, and I end with my own advices, because we all go through this, especially as parents, as who need to be multitasking. So we're all facing this new reality. There are real challenges and they're impacting us in different aspects of our lives, and especially in all the different roles we have to fulfill. As we face it, fear and anxiety are completely normal, and we've seen that with all my colleagues in the other presentations. With all the restrictions going on, we had some new ones yesterday, and I was a little bit in shock coming back from the beach and having that part embracing again, now getting rid of it again. Fear is what is around the corner, and worry and fear is a normal reaction. What is important, and I'll focus in this presentation, that we have to realize our brain is wired to warn us, and that is what we're dealing with it all the time. That we also have this mental machine that can be helpful, but also can be unhelpful. And especially in these times, our brains may be ruminating about what might be happening in the future, how the virus might affect us and our loved ones, and what is happening to our community and our workplace. So we're facing psychological distress, and that is for most of us. We're feeling overwhelmed. We're more vigilant. We're more apprehensive about going to public spaces, and we see that in different kind of ways for us all. There's more concern, and that is what I'm facing myself. How do we effectively take care of our children, of the school, about our futures, and of others in our care? We face uncertainty about the future, about finances, about traveling, for us as expats, about people dying at home. How do we take care of that? How do we let go, and changes of work? There's more restlessness, frustration in the lockdown, sadness and boredom, guilt about sometimes not able to fulfill all the roles. And what we see is a lot of changes in sleep and eating patterns. When we were doing a lot of presentations, for over the last 4 years, we were already as mental health professionals warning about the rise of depression and anxiety. Also in teenagers and younger ones, the rise was already there. And now with all going on, as expected, we'll see this back in research. If we look at data of research, we see, especially now over the summer, a lot of data coming out. And as discussed, even in Oman, the new data is going to be published. There are some trends already that we can see, although it's not all conclusive. So we have to be very careful. But what we see definitely is that anxiety and depression is really upcoming, about 2 to 3 times higher than before. We see definitely more concerns about PTSS, and the PTSS is definitely also recognized for the healthcare workers. So that is something that we really have to focus on altogether. Then what we see is that women seem to be more at risk. There's different kind of ideas about this. In general, it seems that women, we have to be careful here, have more concerns about taking care of others and about taking care of children. We also know, and that is from Nolan Hoeksema research, that women tend to ruminate a little bit more than men in general, so that could also be one of the factors. Healthcare workers, frontliners, are more at risk. Those earlier at risk for mental health problems have now definitely a higher risk. And then we see lower income, minority groups, elderly with no social support. We all have to watch out for these groups. So what is important to have a look at as well, that what we see, stress, fear, and anxiety refers to different kind of states. So what we see is that anxiety is not restricted to only external situations, but it's also associated with the consistent avoidance behavior, which characterizes phobias. So what we see when we now interview clients, that they have a lot of thoughts and images which suggest there is a perceivable danger in the current circumstances, and that anxiety seems to be understandable responses. So we have a lot of misinterpretations. There are different states of anxieties, and it's now a little bit too short to have them all, but what we see a lot is the more generalized anxieties is rising, and then panic disorders. And then I must say, in our clinic lately, we see all kinds of phobias rising, and even phobias that didn't exist of are coming up front. So there's a lot to be developed here. Then I like to highlight for today that in general, on a normal day, we have a window of tolerance. So when my window of tolerance already a little bit higher by doing this presentation. So in a normal day, we're functioning a little bit up and down in our moods. But then when there's difficult circumstances, we get a little bit in a hyperarousal, or when we get lower in an hypoarousal. Now, when there is adversity, we know we either go in a fight, flight, freeze system. And why is it now so important? Because we have this operational brain. And the limbic system will get active when we have really big adversity going on. I highlight this because this can help us through a lot of situations. So in general, we are a little bit more fearful because of our emotional brain and our limbic system. When we go to adversity, we can manage a little bit and relate our things to the brain. But when we go to really traumatic events, then our limbic system will go out of the window of tolerance, and that is where less processing will take place. And that is where we can get stuck in our emotions. Roopa addressed already a lot of these important things, but we can also use this kind of window of tolerance in our daily life. So, for example, when I'm doing this homeschooling with my small son, and I feel already my adversity is coming because there's no homeschool writing going on, then I take a mindful break. I go to calm a little bit down, calm my brain down, and with a full prefrontal cortex, which is the upper part of the brain, which keeps us in balance, I go back to the situation. So overall, with this window of tolerance, if a window of tolerance, we in a normal state of worrying, but when does worrying become a real problem? When there is an excessive worry. So then it gets in the way of life that you wanted to lead. It leaves us demoralized, upset, and exhausted. Now, if we look at the research on anxiety and depression, the reviews give the following recommendations that can help us through this pandemic. What is very important is to create an easier access to the public, to mental health care workers. There's an idea to create more helplines so that we can easier communicate with people who are in need. There's a focus on the importance of lifestyle changes and physical health. I think this is a very underestimated factor, that if we go to worry, if we go to adversity, physical health and physical activity is actually one of the most important things to focus on. So that is something where we can all work together to really make sure that we also take care of our physical health in order to take care of our mental health. We know that telehealth is proven to be helpful, so it will be very important to focus on better provision and make it more easy accessible to the community. And then we focused a lot on what we can do ourselves, but what we also see in all the literature and also with all the global changes worldwide, that we have to develop resiliency. And develop resiliency is how to overcome obstacles, but not only for ourselves, but also how we do it as a community. So if we look at the research, it is very important to do more community-based interventions, to develop more support teams, and especially to develop it within the country and within the own culture, so that we can also have access for those people who are in risk, like the elderly, like the people with the mental health problems. And there is a big important need to do it all together. Now, my colleagues tapped on this part earlier, but what we can do from our point of view is that we can support you there. Acceptance and commitment-based strategies are very helpful. Those ideas of Alya, Sultan, they are also very good for us as individuals. Alya tapped already in. How do we want to be as a person? It gives us also time to reflect on these things now. So our values. Then it's important to look at certain strategies when we worry too much. One of the things we can do is use this worry tree. Is there anything I can do at this moment? Can I anything do right now? Then take action. No, let it go. And sometimes it's very good when we're overwhelmed to bring it back to basic and just to ask a couple of these basic questions. It's a very simple model, but I think all the time very hopeful. What can I control and what can't I control? And especially all the time with all kinds of changes going on, we can keep excessively going what we can't control. but bring it also back, narrow it down to those small steps that you can take for yourself is very important. So what we can control is make a very good routine for ourselves, make a routine in combination with schooling, for example, what I have to do for my son, and focus on the parts that are working now. Then at last, 4 practical advices, the 4 C's. Going through these difficult times, you have to find your own ways as well. And that is not only with mental health advices, but I think a lot of, quite common sense things can helpful there as well. Most of all, curiosity. This whole pandemic has become a whole new journey, and a real voyage of discovery consists not in seeking new landscapes, but also in having new eyes. So I think a school of curiosity can help us tremendously. During the lockdown, we have been here in a mountain for, over, how long has it been? The 3 months. We've seen here all kinds of new birds, all kinds of new small things that we can look up, and that is something that we can be grateful every day and very helpful. The other C is compassionate. Be with heartfulness and gratitude. We have been discussing that already a lot. Then creativity. Nobody can take us away from us, and it's very beneficial for our mental health in general. So read, write, paint, knit, sew, create, learn a new language. It's all there available. And then another aspect, the C, that is one of my favorite researchers. He's very difficult to pronounce. Mahyijari. He has been notified us that real happiness is not in chasing all kinds of things, but real happiness can also found in creating optical moments where we're in balance and where we can do small things. So create daily optimal moments of flow can be very helpful in all these uncertain times and give us again an inner circle of control. All right. Thank you so much for your attention, and I hope some of these advices are helpful.
Renilda, thank you so much for that presentation. It is amazing to see that from the beginning of the pandemic, the beginning of the worldwide lockdown, or the global lockdown, it became all about mental health, how that has been affected, and the rise of mental health, and not only the rise just of people's mental health, but also the awareness. This has given us all around the world as mental health professionals the ability to show what we need and what we do best. And we are very fortunate that people are taking it seriously. So yes, again, in many cultures and many parts of the world, there is a taboo and a stigma, but I personally believe, and many of you might agree, that that stigma is starting to decrease because we're realizing that it is normal to react in these difficult situations. And I want to thank you very much, Renilda, for that presentation, and everyone who's presented so far for giving us those amazing tips on how to better take care of ourselves. Thank you very much. We move now to our final speaker, but just one reminder, and that is to everyone. I've mentioned on the chat, if you have questions, the number is 95244-504. Text your questions, and please write the name of the speaker underscore your question. Wonderful. Our next speaker is Wedad Zakwani. She will be discussing about psychological first aid. How is it in our time that we deal with these situations, working remotely, taking care of our children, taking care of ourselves, making time, trying to prioritize what is important and what is not important for ourselves. Wedad is from the top mental health nurses in the country, leading nurses from the triad at the outpatient clinic all the way to the wards and back and she has over 10 years experience at SQUH Hospital at the Behavior Medicine Department. I welcome her, and I'm just about to put on her presentation. 1 second, Wedad. I'm just finding a presentation, and we will start. There we are. Wedad, the floor is yours.
Yeah. So good evening, everybody. It is my great pleasure to participate tonight in this virtual mental health day event. Thank you, Hashil, and thank you, Dr. Nawal, as well. So I will talk about implementing psychological first aid during COVID-19 pandemic. Next slide, Hashil. In my session, next slide. In my session, we will discuss about evolution of psychological first aid, understand key point of psychological first aid, increase awareness of the sign and symptom of distress, identify strategy to limit the distress and negative health behavior, and finally identify strategy to support the resilience among responders. Next slide. I think all agree the current COVID-19 pandemic has physical and psychological impact on individuals as well as the societies. People with mental health illness are more vulnerable according to WHO reports. WHO also recommends psychological first aid as useful technique that can help many people in time of COVID-19. Next. As early as 1922, the War Office in US had recognized that the need for support for its military personnel who were experiencing stress. So initially was adapted and developed by military. Initially, they start to use critical incident stress debriefing. They debrief the participant, the soldier, after crisis and help them to cope with that they have to deal with. That lead to later to Mitchell model, which was effectively a 7-stage process that further defined critical incident stress debriefing, and the participant work through the 7 phases of the debriefing. The problem with those two models was they're often traumatizing for that participant. Later on, the psychological first aid model developed by National Center for PTSD and National Child Traumatic Stress Network. And now, it is used by many organizations, including healthcare organizations. Next, Tasha. From evidence-based practice point, they found that critical incident stress debriefing and Mitchell model actually do more harm than good. It's actually re-traumatize the people. But in other hand, the psychological first aid model is more supportive and doesn't re-traumatize individuals or make them go back and think about the situation or describe what's happening to them. Next. In this slide, we'll talk about trauma review. Actually, I will not go in details because Ms. Roopa already covered it very well. But I want to emphasize that if we look to the trauma or the crisis situation in general, like COVID-19 pandemic, it's 100% normal reaction to abnormal situation. The early symptoms of trauma have significant impact on Maslow's physiological and safety need. Most common symptoms include feeling fear, anxiety, lost control, etc. And the basic need will go along with that. But The aim of psychological first aid is to reduce the long-term impact of the trauma, return the individual to baseline level of functioning, normalize the worrying thought, and promote healthy coping and provide feeling of safety. Next, Hashil. So here, we'll see the effect of stress. Any event or crisis like what's happening in COVID-19 pandemic is very stressful. Why? Because it is unexpected. There is uncertainty. Many people die, especially young age, and it lasts for a long time and affects a long area of the world. All of this will cause high level of distress due to the social restriction, lack of social support, financial support, and fear of spreading the virus to family, like what's happening with most of healthcare providers. All of this distress will promote the harmful behavior such as sleep and eating issue, smoking, and sometimes also increase the consumption of alcohol, which lead later to a psychiatric issues. Next. So what is psychological first aid? It is a kind of psychosocial support aimed to help people in distress so they feel calm and supported. WHO defines it as human supportive response to a fellow human being who is suffering and who may need support. Next, Hashil. It's not a professional counseling, and when you are using psychological first aid, please don't ask for details. Don't pathologize. That means don't label the reaction as symptom, or don't speak in terms of diagnosis, disorder, or pathology. So here, 7 core model of psychological first aid. Number 1, safety and comfort. Look to the current situation with COVID-19, which is called social distension and the lockdown. All of these strategies meant to make sure that people are in safe environment. Encourage them to follow those strategies and to give attention to their physical comfort needs, such as healthy lifestyle and exercising. Additionally, when it's come to safety and comfort needs, it may come the spiritual needs. Encourage them to be more creative to meet their spiritual needs, especially with these special circumstances. Another important point is that just be there. Your present means that you are concerned and supportive, and that they mean a lot to the individual. Second step is stabilization. Use simple statements. Meet the individual where they are at emotionally. Don't ask for details. Encourage to get enough sleep. Some people are very emotional if did not get enough sleep. Step 3, gather information about the current need and concern. Are they experiencing guilt, shame, self-harm? That is a red flag. What type of coping mechanism they have, and if it is adaptive or non-adaptive. Fourth, assistance. Discuss a plan for that addressing need and help to regain self-confidence. Number 5, it's very important, the social support. Identify his or her existing support and encourage to reconnect to that social support, to their family, friends, etc. by using social media, phone calls, this new technology, Zoom, video calls, etc. Step 6, coping. Don't over pathologize the issue. Remember, it is normal reaction to abnormal situation. Talk about expected reaction. What are things that can people experience during this time, like feeling worried, overwhelmed, anxious? Review their positive coping skill, like maintain healthy lifestyle, relaxation technique, mediation, reading. And final step is the collaboration. Generate and coordinate referrals as needed. So if you think that the psychological first aid is not helpful for this person, you can now refer to a professional like psychiatrist or psychologist. When to refer? If there is self-harm thought, if there is disorientation or severe depression, and also sleep disturbance. Okay. At our department at SQUH, we generate hotline support program for our college working with COVID-19 patient. We also conducted like weekly program for ED and ICU staff, and that program was talking about psychological first aid and how to provide psychological first aid in their environment. Okay, next is, so how to deliver psychological first aid. I already covered some of that, and what to do is just look, listen, and then link. Observe first, ask simple questions to determine how you can help. Often the best way to make contact is to offer water, tea, or food. The person will either avoid you, which is normal, or flood you with the contact. So be prepared to listen. Focus on what they want to tell and how you can help. Then intervene or link accordingly. So the next step, Hashil. So as we discussed earlier, psychological first aid is a method of helping people in distress. It's like first aid. So they feel calm and supported to cope better with their challenges. It involves paying attention to reaction, active listening, and if needed, practical assistance such as problem solving or refer to further assistance. Psychological first aid is very important. It helps normalize the worry and other emotion, promote healthy coping, and provide feeling of safety, calming, and hope. This is my slide. I covered briefly about psychological first aid, and here further website for more information. You can go and learn more about psychological first aid. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wedad, for that amazing presentation. And for everyone else, our audience, psychological first aid, just like a normal physical first aid, when you have a physical injury, it's about bandaging the wounds. Here, it's about the emotional wounds. It is very important that we understand this tool. And there are many links. If you wish to even learn, there are resources that are available. You can go to, for example, Future Learn. They have the Public Health of England have a 3-week course on how you can become a psychological first aider. And it's more focused on the COVID-19 era, this pandemic. So for those who are interested, you can go, I will write it on the chat, so you can go onto Future Learn. I'll write on the chat for those who wish to benefit and learn more. So that's psychological first aid at Future Learn. Thank you to all the speakers. With regards to questions, I believe we have someone who's asking Renilda a question. And that question is, Renilda, are you still there? There is a question for Renilda, and the question is how to deal with pandemic fatigue and the frustration associated with counterintuitive lockdown measures.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much for that question. I think where it comes back to is focus on that part of our inner circle of control. And that means, yeah, what is available for you around. And that means coming back to creativity as well. And yeah, it's part of it now that we get tired, that we have no of our routines there. But at the same time, if we look at our values, at important things that matter, there's definitely things that we can do. What I always say, go back a little bit to your childhood. What is the playtime? We forget that a lot. And if you go back to your childhood, there were things that you enjoyed to do, that you did spontaneously, that you were doing in the moment. And can you get some of this back? And if we get some of it back, we can enjoy the moments a little bit more. So yeah, if I look for myself, I've developed my photography, and in the beginning it was small steps, and now you see me sometimes in the garden looking at the birds with a longer lens, and it is extremely satisfying. So yeah, look for those things again. Those things are in your inner circle of control, and definitely we sometimes get fed up with it. But at the other hand, there is so much more to do. Look at music, what I said, before we were on a kind of treadmill and all the time running around, and everyone was complaining we cannot do things anymore. Yeah, if we are at 8 o'clock at home, we have a lot of time. We can cook again, we can do pottery, we can paint, we can have board games with our children. So yeah, take it also as an opportunity to connect. Connection is very, very important, and also that we can do with a lot of creativity. I had my birthday in the summer, and of course I was desperate all the time. It's changing and changing. It was longer and longer, and in the end we had 30 people online, and everybody was telling anecdotes from 20 years ago and things we forgot. And I think it was one of my best birthdays there. And now with more problems going on, we will do it again. So yeah, look at those things, and keep on being playful. And yeah, that will definitely help.
Thank you for that, Renilda. I just muted her. I've sent a kind reminder to anyone who has any further questions. I don't know if anyone has further questions. But I don't know. We could possibly still send it, and maybe we can ask. I'm not too sure. But we have about 6 more minutes left. If there are no further questions, then I would like to thank everyone for joining in, and thank our guest speakers. We are truly grateful. And before we end, a very kind word to my colleague and my supervisor, Nawal, head of Psychiatry. You can give them.
Oh yeah. Thank you, everybody. I would like to thank the speakers for their contribution, all participants who joined us this evening. Without your contribution, this event won't be successful. Thank you again, and it's a pleasure working with all of you, Renilda, Alya, and Roopa, and Dr. Martin, of course. And Wedad, inshallah, we'll have more future joint events, and maybe we can work together somewhere. Thank you very much, and hopefully we'll see you again in the coming event next year.
Thank you, everyone, for joining in. Thank you, our guest speakers. I believe we'll have to end it today. And
Yes.
we hope you all have a tremendous evening. What's the rest of it? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.